I don't remember the last time I truly rested. Not the kind of rest where your body stops moving, but the kind where your mind becomes still, where you are not chasing the next task, the next call, the next goal. Maybe you've felt it too. That quiet panic underneath the surface, whispering that if you stop for even a moment, everything might fall apart. Every morning, I woke up with a list already running through my mind. Even before brushing my teeth, I was answering imaginary emails, replaying yesterday's conversations, making mental checklists for things I hadn't yet done. I moved through my days like a machine, proud of my productivity, but slowly, without even realizing it, I was forgetting how to simply be. I was praised for being driven. Friends admired how I balanced work, family, and social life. But no one saw the exhaustion behind my eyes, or how I would sometimes sit in the car, parked in silence, just to avoid entering another space where something more was expected of me. I wasn't running towards something meaningful. I was running away from stillness, from silence, from the terrifying thought that maybe, without all the doing, I wouldn't know who I was. One night, I couldn't sleep. The ceiling fan above me spun like my thoughts, endlessly, uselessly. I tried guided meditations, sleep apps, calming music. Nothing worked. I picked up my phone, and out of nowhere, I searched. Why can't I stop doing? It seemed silly, but one article caught my eye. It spoke of a concept I'd never really explored. Doing nothing is a form of wisdom. It sounded like nonsense, but something about it stuck with me. A story about the Buddha, how he left behind everything, not to gain something, but to discover what already was. That idea lingered the next morning. Instead of jumping into my normal frenzy, I sat on the edge of my bed, just breathing. It felt wrong at first, like I was wasting time, like I was being lazy. But something inside me whispered, "Stay." So I stayed. 1 minute turned into 5. And for those 5 minutes, I wasn't anyone's employee, partner, or provider. I was just a breathing, living being. Still, old habits die hard. As I moved through the day, the pressure returned, tasks piling up, notifications buzzing. I caught myself rushing again, multitasking, proving my worth through deadlines met and praise received. And yet, there was now a small voice in me that questioned, is this really life? That voice grew louder when I watched an old monk speak during a video someone sent me. His words were simple. You are not your achievements. You are not your failures. You are not what you do. You are what remains when everything else is still. I remember pausing the video and staring out my window. I couldn't remember the last time I just looked at the sky. The clouds moved so slowly, completely unbothered by deadlines or expectations. They weren't trying to be anything. They simply were. Something broke open in me that day. I realized I had spent years fearing emptiness. But in truth, the deepest peace lives in that emptiness. I had confused constant motion with progress. I thought stillness meant weakness. But it takes courage to stop. It takes trust to believe that life can unfold without force. My body had been whispering it for years, through headaches, tight shoulders, a restless heart. I just hadn't listened. That night, I sat on the floor with a cup of tea and didn't reach for my phone. I didn't check messages. I didn't try to learn something new. I just sat. The silence was awkward at first, then sacred. I began to notice things, the sound of wind moving through trees outside my window, the way the steam curled from my cup, the rhythm of my breath. Things I had forgotten to love. What surprised me most was that the world didn't collapse when I paused. My to-do list was still there, but my relationship to it changed. It no longer defined me. It was simply a part of the flow, not the whole ocean. I started practicing short moments of doing nothing throughout the day. One breath before opening my inbox. A silent look at the sky before entering a meeting. Lying on the floor for 5 minutes and just feeling what my body had been holding. At first, it felt rebellious, but over time, it felt like homecoming. People ask me now if I'm less productive. Maybe, but I'm more alive. I've learned that life doesn't happen in the rush. It happens in the stillness in between, in the pauses, in the quiet moments where nothing is being accomplished, and yet everything is being felt. The struggle of always doing didn't vanish overnight. I still fall back into old rhythms, but now I recognize them. I catch myself before the tide pulls me too far out, and I return to breath, to stillness, to the art of simply being. Because the truth is, we are not here just to do. We are here to be, to feel, to breathe, to see, to love, to rest, and sometimes doing nothing is the most sacred thing we can do. I had always heard stories of the Buddha, the prince who left his palace, the seeker who sat beneath the Bodhi tree, the enlightened one who found peace while the world burned with desire. But I never truly understood him. To me, he was a distant figure carved in stone, smiling in perfect stillness, untouched by the chaos that consumes the rest of us. But the more I struggled with my own restlessness, the more I found myself drawn to his story, not as a myth, but as a mirror. There was one evening in particular. I remember it clearly. I was exhausted, not just in body, but in soul. That kind of weariness that sinks deep into your bones. I was scrolling aimlessly through my phone when I came across a documentary about Siddhartha's early life. I clicked play, not expecting much, but something about the way they told the story was different. They didn't focus on miracles or doctrines. They focused on the man, the human, the seeker. He had everything: wealth, comfort, a loving family. He was surrounded by silk and song, by celebrations and laughter, but still, something inside him whispered that this couldn't be it. That pleasure without purpose is just a golden cage. That whisper, I knew it. I'd heard it too. So when Siddhartha left the palace, not out of rebellion, but out of deep longing, I understood. He wasn't running away from luxury. He was walking toward truth. For years, he wandered. He tried every extreme, from indulgence to starvation. He tortured his body in the belief that maybe suffering was the doorway to freedom. But even in his most ascetic state, peace eluded him. The stillness he was seeking wasn't in pain, nor in possessions. And then, the moment that changed everything. One morning, weak and emaciated, Siddhartha collapsed beneath a Bodhi tree. His body could go no further. His mind had exhausted every question, and so he did the one thing he had never done before. He stopped. He didn't chant. He didn't move. He didn't try to fix or control. He simply sat in complete stillness and made a vow. I will not rise from this place until I find the truth. That moment, I realized, was not an act of doing. It was an act of surrender, of letting go. And it struck me like a wave. Sometimes the greatest strength is not in action, but in presence. Not in conquering the world, but in sitting still enough to meet your own reflection. As I watched him sitting beneath that tree, even through a screen, I felt something shift inside me. I closed my eyes and imagined myself there, not as an observer, but as someone beside him. No words, just stillness. At first, I resisted. My thoughts screamed. My muscles tensed. But I kept breathing. I imagined the rustling leaves above, the earth beneath, the subtle rhythm of existence without effort. And slowly, something softened. In that stillness, I could feel what Siddhartha must have felt, the gentle unraveling of illusion, the tender unveiling of truth. He saw that life is suffering, yes, but not because the world is cruel. Suffering arises from attachment, from clinging, from the restless urge to always do, to always become, to always control. He realized that freedom was not a place to reach. It was the letting go of the very need to reach. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the Bodhi tree. I began to wonder, What if each of us has a tree within us, a place where we can sit, truly sit, and stop pretending to be more than we are? I began to sit every morning, not in perfect lotus, not for hours, just 10 minutes. My mind would race, but I remembered Buddha's journey. He too was once lost in thoughts, in desires, in fears. And yet he stayed. And so I stayed. And something miraculous began to happen, not outside, but within. I began to notice my thoughts, not as commands, but as clouds. I began to feel my emotions without drowning in them. I realized that I didn't have to fix or fight everything I felt. I could simply witness. That was the awakening, not to some divine light in the sky, but to the simple, sacred truth that peace was never far away. It was here, in this breath, in this moment, in the space between thoughts, in the stillness I'd been avoiding all my life. And I began to see Buddha not as a god, not as a statue, but as a friend, as a teacher who once struggled like I do, who once searched like I am, who finally found stillness not by escaping life, but by embracing it fully. There's a story that during the night of his enlightenment, Mara, the demon of illusion, came to tempt him, to frighten him, to pull him away from his stillness. But Buddha didn't fight. He didn't run. And Mara vanished. That became my mantra too. When anxiety came, I see you, Mara. When guilt rose up, I see you, Mara. When I felt like I wasn't doing enough, I see you, Mara. And like shadows in the morning sun, those thoughts began to fade. Stillness wasn't emptiness. It was presence. It was the most intimate relationship I had ever known with myself, with life, with truth. The Buddha's awakening taught me that I don't have to abandon the world to find peace. I just have to stop abandoning myself. Now, I carry the Bodhi tree inside me, a symbol, a space, a sanctuary. And every time I feel the pull of the world demanding more, asking me to be faster, louder, better, I return to breath, to silence, to being, and I remember, enlightenment isn't a destination. It's a decision to sit, to see, to stay, just like the Buddha did. It's strange, isn't it? How we can be physically somewhere, in a room, in a conversation, even in a moment that's supposed to be beautiful, and still feel completely absent. I lived like that for years. My body would show up, but my mind was always elsewhere, worrying about what might happen tomorrow, replaying what went wrong yesterday, making plans, solving imaginary problems, building entire futures that didn't yet exist. I thought this made me productive, but now I see I was just running from the present. The truth is, I was afraid of now. Because the present felt too quiet, too exposed. In the present, there's no mask, no busyness to hide behind. There's just me. And for a long time, I didn't know how to be with that dot. But then, something began to shift. It started with the breath. A teacher once told me, the breath is the bridge between body and mind. It is the anchor of now. I didn't fully understand what he meant until I began to sit in silence, day after day, just observing my inhale and exhale. No mantras, no expectations, just presence. At first, it was uncomfortable. My thoughts didn't want to be watched. They danced and screamed, begging me to follow them into their spirals. But something in me had changed. I didn't chase them. I just noticed it was like sitting beside a highway, watching cars pass. Thoughts came and went, some loud, some tempting, some painful, but I didn't have to get in any of them. I could just be dot, and in that being, I discovered something. I never expected peace, not the kind of peace you feel on vacation or after solving a problem. A deeper peace, the kind that comes when you realize you don't have to fix everything. You don't have to know what's next. You can simply rest in the mystery of this moment, fully awake, fully alive. I remember one morning, I was drinking tea by the window. Normally, that would be background noise to emails or texts. But that day, I just watched the steam rise. I noticed how the sunlight played on the floor. I felt the warmth of the cup in my hand. Nothing grand was happening, and yet everything was happening. The world wasn't rushing. The moment wasn't begging to be filled. It was complete, and so was I. Being present doesn't mean we stop thinking. It doesn't mean we stop planning or working. It simply means we stop living in the illusion that life is elsewhere. Because life is always now, not tomorrow, not yesterday, now and yet. Most of us live like we're rehearsing for a moment that never arrives. I started to notice how often I was only half listening in conversations. How often I ate meals without tasting them. How often I would walk outside and not see a single tree. But when I brought my awareness to what was right in front of me, the world transformed. Colors became richer. Sounds became music. My breath became a sacred rhythm. Every moment, no matter how ordinary, held something divine. I began to understand what the Buddha meant when he said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." It wasn't just advice. It was a way of life. One day, during a walk in the park, I stopped near a pond. There was a ripple in the water, spreading slowly from a single drop. And I thought, this is exactly what presence does. One small act of awareness can ripple through your whole life. You don't have to fix everything today. You don't have to become someone else. You just have to arrive fully in this breath, in this step, in this heartbeat. And when you do, something magical happens. The anxiety that fed on future fears begins to dissolve. The regrets that haunted you begin to lose their grip. You no longer feel split between who you were and who you're supposed to be. You just are. It's so simple, but so rare, because we've forgotten how to trust the now. We've been taught that rest is laziness, that stillness is unproductive, that the moment we stop striving, we lose value. But what if the opposite is true? What if the greatest clarity, the deepest strength, the most radiant joy comes not from chasing life, but from being fully in it? Presence doesn't mean life gets easier, but it does mean you meet life as it is, without filters, without resistance. You start to see things clearly. You start to respond instead of react. You begin to love without condition, because you're no longer loving from a place of fear or lack. You're loving from wholeness. I don't claim to have mastered this. I still get distracted. I still get caught in thought. But now I know the way back. One breath, one pause, one return to now dot. And with each return, the present becomes less of a stranger and more of a friend, a teacher, a home. There is power in being present, not the loud kind that conquers, but the quiet kind that frees. It teaches you that you don't need to be anywhere else. You don't need to be anyone else. You are enough right here. So now, when I feel overwhelmed, I ask myself gently, where are you? If the answer is the future, I return. If the answer is the past, I return. Again and again, I return to the only moment that ever truly exists. This one. There was a time when I believed that wisdom came only from books, teachers, or deep philosophical conversations. I overlooked the quietest teacher of all, the one that had always been around me, waiting patiently for me to slow down and listen. Nature, I had spent so much of my life disconnected from it. Buildings, screens, and schedules surrounded me. My days were measured in deadlines and meetings, not in sunrises or the smell of rain. I had forgotten that the natural world moves at a rhythm far wiser than my own. But one day, after a particularly exhausting week, I decided to take a walk in a nearby forest, not for exercise, not for productivity, just to be with the trees. The moment I stepped onto the trail, something shifted. The air was different. softer. The noise in my mind didn't vanish, but it began to fade beneath the whispers of leaves and the distant call of birds. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't rushing. I didn't check the time. I just walked and listened. Each tree stood without urgency. Each leaf danced without fear. The wind didn't try to impress. The sky didn't apologize for clouds. Everything was simply being fully, unapologetically, and I realized this is what it means to live in harmony. Nature doesn't resist the present moment. It embraces it. Trees don't complain about the seasons. Rivers don't rush to their destination. Flowers bloom when the time is right. Everything unfolds according to a rhythm that isn't forced but trusted. In contrast, I had been forcing my life for years, pushing, planning, proving. Nature was teaching me something radical. Stillness isn't inaction. It's deep trust. And movement doesn't have to be rushed. It can be graceful, grounded, and true. I sat beneath an old tree. Its roots thick and gnarled, its trunk covered in moss. I closed my eyes and simply breathed. And that's when the second teacher arrived. Breath. I had always taken it for granted, this invisible rhythm keeping me alive. But that day, I watched it with new eyes. Inhale, exhale, rise, fall. Breath never hurries. It never clings to the inhale or resists the exhale. It comes, it goes. It lives in flow. It began to dawn on me. The breath is life's most intimate. Meditation, it connects us to the present. It grounds us when thoughts spin out of control. And it reminds us, moment by moment, to surrender. I placed my hand on my chest and followed each breath as if it were a sacred prayer. And in that quiet forest, I realized something that changed me forever. I don't need to escape to find peace. I just need to return to the earth beneath me, to the breath within me. That was the beginning of a new relationship with nature, with my breath, with myself. Since then, I've made it a habit to go outside each day, even if just for a few minutes, to feel the warmth of the sun on my skin, to watch the sky change its colors, to notice the details I once overlooked, the veins on a leaf, the rhythm of falling rain, the dance of light on water. I started noticing that nature mirrors our inner world. Storms pass. Seasons change. Even the darkest night eventually meets the morning, no matter how barren winter looks. Spring always returns. And maybe, just maybe, that's how we are too. When I feel overwhelmed, I sit by my window and watch the trees. I notice how they bend in the wind, but do not break. They sway, they trust the roots, And somehow, that reminds me to soften, to breathe, to trust my own roots, the breath, the body, the present moment. There's something else nature taught me: patience. A seed doesn't sprout just because we demand it. Growth takes time. Blossoming can't be rushed. And silence often is not emptiness, but a sacred pause before transformation. Breath teaches the same. If you try to force it, you become tense. But if you surrender to it, it nourishes you. It carries you. It teaches you how to let go. Over time, my breath became my refuge. Whenever life felt too much, I'd return to it. I didn't need to analyze or understand everything. I just needed to feel the inhale and exhale over and over until the fog began to lift. And here's the most beautiful part. This refuge is always available. You don't need money, a retreat, or a quiet mountain. You just need to pause and notice that the earth beneath your feet, the breath rising and falling, the life moving quietly all around you. I once thought I had to do something extraordinary to feel connected, whole, or spiritual. But now I see the extraordinary is always here, in the birdsong, in the rustling wind, in the simple act of breathing with awareness. There's a Zen saying I love: sitting quietly, doing nothing. Spring comes and the grass grows by itself. It speaks to everything I've learned. We don't need to force our way to peace. We need only to stop, to listen, and to be present with nature, with breath, with now. These are the oldest teachers in the world, and they ask nothing of us except our attention. So now, when life feels heavy, I don't try to fix it all at once. I go outside, I sit by a tree, I close my eyes, I follow the breath, and I let the world remind me of what I had forgotten, that everything is already unfolding as it should, that stillness is wise, that breath is sacred, and that the present moment in all its simplicity is enough. I used to believe that ancient wisdom had little place in the modern world. I thought the teachings of monks, sages, and philosophers belonged in temples, not in boardrooms or city traffic. But as the noise of modern life grew louder, deadlines, screens, constant connectivity, I found myself searching for silence. And strangely enough, it was those old teachings, those seemingly distant voices, that began to guide me home. You see, the more complex life became, the more I longed for simplicity. Not in the sense of having less, but in the sense of being more present, more grounded, more aware. That's when I began to apply what I had been learning, not just in quiet moments of meditation, but in the chaos of daily life. I started small, Instead of reaching for my phone first thing in the morning, I sat in stillness for a few minutes. I felt the air on my skin, the rhythm of my breath, the way the light changed through the curtains. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real, and gradually, something within me shifted. The world didn't slow down, but I did. Instead of reacting to every notification, I learned to pause. Instead of filling every silence with noise, I learned to listen, really listen, to others, to myself, to life. When I walked, I walked. When I ate, I tasted. When I spoke, I meant it. And when I rested, I allowed myself to truly rest without guilt, without the need to justify it. It wasn't easy. The world still screamed for attention. Hustle culture still whispered that success meant never stopping. I had begun to understand what the Buddha knew all along, that peace doesn't come from achieving more, but from needing less. In ancient times, the Buddha sat beneath a tree and watched his thoughts like clouds. In modern times, I sit in traffic and try to do the same. The setting is different, but the principle is the same. Awareness, presence, surrender. I've learned that mindfulness isn't about escaping the modern world. It's about meeting it with open eyes and a quiet heart. It's about drinking your coffee without scrolling, listening to a friend without waiting to reply, feeling the ground beneath your feet as you walk down a busy street. These are small things, but they add up, and when you practice them, moment by moment, the noise begins to lose its grip. The inner space grows larger. You begin to respond with clarity instead of habit. You begin to live on purpose, not on autopilot. It's not that life becomes perfect. It's that you stop needing it to be. The teachings I once dismissed as ancient are now my compass. When I feel overwhelmed, I remember impermanence, that everything passes. When I feel restless, I remember the breath, always there, always steady. When I feel lost, I return to stillness, not to find answers, but to make space for them to arise. Technology, ambition, achievement, none of these are the enemy. The real danger is forgetting ourselves within them, losing our center, becoming so consumed by doing that we forget how to simply be. That's why these ancient practices matter more than ever. They are not relics of the past. They are medicine for the present. You don't need to shave your head or live in a monastery. You don't need to renounce your life. You only need to return to it fully, honestly, gently. Each breath is an invitation. Each moment is a doorway. Each ordinary day is sacred. If we choose to see it that way, I've come to believe that the most radical act in today's world is to live with awareness, to stop running, to sit with ourselves, to face the truth without distraction. And the truth is, we are already whole. The wisdom of the Buddha isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who we are beneath the noise. About waking up, not just once, but again and again, in the middle of our modern lives. So now, when I sit on the train, I don't always pull out my phone. Sometimes I watch the city go by and breathe. When I wait in line, I don't always rush the moment. Sometimes I feel the soles of my feet pressing into the ground and let that be enough. And when I face a hard day, I don't fight the discomfort. I greet it like an old friend and sit with it until it passes. This is my practice. Not perfect, not polished, but real. And it has changed everything. I no longer seek peace in far-off places. I find it in the breath, in silence, in presence, in letting go of what I thought I had to be. In the end, the art of doing nothing is not about laziness. It's about freedom. It's about seeing that your worth is not tied to how much you produce. It's about trusting that life will carry you if only you stop resisting. This ancient wisdom has shown me how to live again, not just survive, not just function, but truly live. And now I carry that wisdom with me, not as a belief, but as a way of being. A way of walking through this noisy, beautiful, chaotic world with an open heart and a quiet mind, doing nothing, but being everything.